Hello YouTube, and welcome back to the conservatory. So I left you in the last episode with me making this little bracket here, and I wanted it to work so that it would work with the side stand in place or on its own. Now obviously with the side stand in place there's going to be two great big bolts going through it, but if we take the side stand off, what I've done is I've actually made up some small Allen bolts. Now these were originally brake disc bolts that I cut down and re-threaded to an M10 pitch, and they fit in, and you can see that looks a whole lot neater than two great big M10 bolts sticking out. So we've got the option there of using the bike with or without the side stand. The only problem with this bracket is I did have just a 6mm bolt going through this end here, and it's a bit of a pain because you've got to sort of get in underneath the chain, and you invariably end up getting chain lube all over your hands, and the access isn't great. So what I want to do is I'm going to fit a riv nut in here, and a riv nut is exactly what it says on the tin. So it's a rivet, but it's got a threaded section in here, and the idea is we put it in here, and then using this tool we can actually compress it and it will grip itself in place. But before we do that, there is another job that I need to do today, finishing things off, and that is fit some new grips. So just like we did with the fuel hose, I've got these soaking in some boiling water, which should hopefully soften them up. So I'm just going to move that out of the way before I spill any more water everywhere. And we'll get back on with this bracket. So I do actually need to drill a hole slightly larger to accommodate the riv nut. Now I think it's a 9mm hole, it might be 9.5, but we're going to start with a 9 and then we can work our way up. You don't want to make the hole too large because you do want the riv nut to be quite a tight fit, which this is. So literally put the riv nut through the hole, hold it in place, and then we squeeze. And unscrew it. Of course, because of the shape of the bracket, fails on the tool. But there we go. So there's our riv nut, nice and securely in. Should make life a lot easier. So I'm going to go and refit this now, and then we'll go on and have a look at the rest of the fairings. I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so here is the lower fairing bracket in place. I mean, it is a bit chunky, but as I said, it needed to do work in two applications, so with or without the side stand. So you can see there's those two bolts. Just looks a little bit neater than having a big old chunky bolt like that sticking out. But obviously we will need those if we're using the side stand, which is laying down there. So that's the bracket, complete with this riv nut, and I've just used a stainless steel dome headed bolt and one of those roofing washers that I got from Screwfix, and that's them there. You can see it's just a washer with a rubber washer bonded to it, so ideal for use with fiberglass fairings or fairings in general. Where I haven't used those, what I've done is I've taken an old bit of inner tube and I've just stamped out my own rubber washers using the gasket punch set, and you can see on here I want to use these bolts to secure the seat unit, as they're nice and flat, and that's going to go right where your knees are, so I didn't want something that stuck out as much as one of those. So yeah, literally just punched out the bit of inner tube to make a rubber washer. So moving on, we've got that bracket, and then coming round you can see I've used the original Zeus fasteners. So we've got 1, 2, 3 there. Now at the front, what I've had to do is I was missing the Zeus fasteners here and here, so I've actually just used again more bolts with the roofing washers and rubber washers behind ordinary washers on the back. Now I'm not too worried about having the normal bolts here because they're quite easy to access when it comes to undoing them, but also these Zeus fasteners do have a habit of shaking themselves loose while you're riding, so it's never a bad idea to have the bolts in as a backup because they're not going to come loose. Finally, moving up, again you can see a couple more dome-headed Allen bolts with nuts behind them, and again the rubber washers. And at the front I did manage to find this front fairing mount, so it's an aluminium housing that takes a countersunk bolt, so that all looks a bit more racy than just having a big old bolt sticking out the front there. So that's the fairings on. Like I said, they're not the greatest, they will need quite a lot of work to make them pretty, but yeah, on the whole I don't think it looks too bad. So I think we're now at that stage where we need to fit the rubber grips. So I'm just going to reposition the camera and we'll get that done. Okay, so as you can see, there's no grip on this handlebar, but I have actually got the grip on the throttle side. Not that you can actually see it from there. So the easiest way to remove them is literally just to cut them off. There's no point trying to wrestle them off or try and fiddle them off, because let's be honest, if you're replacing them they're going to go in the bin anyway. So there we go. So literally just cut that off, as you can see. So we've got the new grips. Now when you come to fit them, bear in mind that they are handed. There is a left and a right, and I don't know how clearly you can see it, but that is the right hand grip and that is the left hand grip, because the hole is slightly larger diameter because it needs to fit over the throttle tube, whereas this one goes straight on the clip-ons. So let's do the easier one first. Just give it a dry off and we'll see if soaking it in the hot water has helped at all. Now there are people who come up with all sorts of weird and wonderful methods for fitting hand grips. Some say you should use hairspray. One that works quite well is getting an air line and just shooting air up through the grip. But as you can see, soaking it in hot water was almost too easy. Now there is just one final little racy job that I want to do, and that is actually lock wire the grips in place. So what you do is you take some lock wire and you literally just wrap it round twice and find the lock wire pliers, which of course I was organised. I would have them to hand. And what that does, by lock wiring them, it does help secure them in place and stop them slipping on you. So that's the first one done. stab you in the palm. Now I've positioned it so that the twist is at the back, because if you think about it, that's going to be in that part of your hand there, so it shouldn't catch on your gloves. I just need to do the same again on this side. And if you actually look at these grips, they do have a groove moulded into them. Just take the lock wire. Now don't go too tight because you'll just cut through the grip. But there it is, done. And again, just bend that round out the way so that it sits neatly in the groove and doesn't catch. Okay, well, I don't think you need to see me do the throttle grip. It'll be exactly the same principle. The only thing is, it's even more crucial that you don't over tighten it, because you can actually crush the grip and restrict your throttle movement. So I'm gonna zoom you out, and I'm gonna head around here and do the next grip. And then I think we're almost ready to fit the rest of the bodywork. Well, now that I've got the grips on, I think we're ready just to fit the tank and seat unit, and they're pretty much going to be the last jobs I need to do on it. So before I fit the tank, there is just one little modification I did do, and that's just here behind the regulator rectifier, where we've got this metal plate that it bolts to. Because I've run the fuel line behind it, I have just actually fitted a bit of 6mm plastic piping just on the edge there, so that even if the fuel hose does rub against it, it's not going to chafe through on the sharp metal edge. Just a little bit of safety really. Probably overkill, but just makes me feel happier. So let's get the tank on. And again, it's all a bit of a fiddle. So put him in at an angle. Sometimes these just slide on, other times they don't. So I can understand why a lot of racers actually get rid of the handle on the fuel tap and run the bike without them. The other thing I didn't fit to the tank last time we fitted it were these little rubber blocks. And these sit just here to hold the tank off the frame and stop it rubbing on the frame. Now, unfortunately, these ones I've got in my hand, I actually nicked off my other bike just to show you. And I don't have a set for this. So I'm going to improvise, as is the way of my videos. And I've just got a bit of fuel pipe, and I've cut a slit in it, and that will just slide over the seam of the tank and do the same job. What you do tend to find with these is, whenever you remove the tank, they usually end up dropping down somewhere. So it's quite a good idea to actually secure them in place with a bit of silicone or some glue. So that's that in place. Let's just get the fuel hose reconnected. And like I said, I've got a stainless Allen bolt at the front to replace that black finish one that will just rust in no time at all. Okay, that's the tank on. We're now ready to fit the seat unit. But before I do that, I need to fit I've got them here somewhere. There's these spire nuts. Now, on the standard seat unit, there is a pin that goes in through this hole here. Obviously, the fiberglass race fairings don't have that. So what I tend to use is I've got these spire nuts. As you'll see, I've drilled a hole in the seat unit to match. Which is just here, and we're going to use these flat bolts here. So get our seat unit, make sure we've got a bit of wire for the tail light, and these are always a bit of a pain to line up, but here we go. So again, using my little stainless dome-headed nut, Allen bolts, and the rubber washers. And now it's just a case of lining everything up. That's that side in. It may seem a bit odd fitting that bolt whilst I'm here, but I can actually look inside the fairing and make sure it all lined up with the mount. And now that we've got one of them in, the other one should line up too. The rear light, and last but by no means least, we need to do these front ones. And as you can see, the reason I'm using these flat-headed Allen bolts, they're actually a cabinet fixing bolt. Again, courtesy of screw fix. But you can see right where they are is where your knees go, so you want something quite a low profile there. So that you don't rub your knees on it. There's one. For some reason this one's proving to be a bit of a pain to line up. In fact, I think I'm going to need a longer bolt. easier. Okay, and last but by no means least, we just need to fit the seat unit, or the seat even. And that just sits under the two tabs at the back. We're just going to bolt that in place. And there we go. So for the first time, you can actually see the completed bike. All in one piece. So I think what I'm going to do is just move you round a bit so you can get a better view of the bike. Well, there it is, all complete, and yeah, there's only one thing left to do, and that's to sit on it and make vroom vroom noises. So yeah, as you can see, I'm really a bit big for this, but it does seem to fit me nicely. And I can't wait to get it out on track. So hopefully I have a track day booked for next weekend, and weather permitting, we'll take it out and give it a shakedown and see how she performs. Obviously that is very much dependent on the weather. So there it is. That is the bike finished. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you found some of the videos helpful in solving a few of the problems that are quite common to these bikes, things like rebuilding the carbs and the brakes and everything. So before I finish, I guess there's a couple of questions that we just need to answer. So the first one is, I've entitled this a budget track bike, and did I achieve it as a budget? Well, the real answer is I genuinely don't know what I've spent on this. As is the correct answer for any project on this. If you started worrying about money, you'd never do it anyway. But I did do a quick summary of what I've spent on it, just to get a rough idea. Now, far and away, the most expensive item on this bike was refurbishing the brakes. But to be honest, that was the one area I don't think you could skimp on. So what with the pistons and the calipers, the master cylinder rebuild, and the rear brakes, the fluid, I've probably spent about £150 on parts just to do that part alone. Obviously, with this being a previous race bike, I already had the braided hoses, but that would probably add another £40–50 onto it. So quite a lot of money was taken up with just the brakes. Another area that could have been quite expensive would be the forks. Obviously the fork seals and the oil wouldn't be too expensive, but the uprated springs will set you back about £85. So it's a budget about £100 to rebuild your forks. Again, the shock, I was lucky I was able to do it myself, so all that really cost me was the seal kit and a bit of fluid, so probably about 30 quid. Then we come to other sundry items. There was the head bearings, various gaskets, oil and filter, things like that. They all add up. The chain sprockets, that needed replacing. Bit of money was spent on the wiring and a few other bits. But where a lot of the money went, which is surprising, was on tins of paint. So what with the exhaust paint, various tins of or cans of high build primer, sandpaper, the wet and dry paper even. I've probably spent £100 just on those parts alone. But they're all, yeah, you buy one or two at a time. It doesn't really sort of seem like a lot, but when you add it all up, it is surprising how much money you spend just on paint. So all in all, obviously a lot of the parts I already had, but I think there's no reason why, if you were building a bike like this yourself, you could probably do it for about £1,500, which I think for a refurbished, ready to go track bike isn't that bad. Obviously, yes, if you wanted to buy lots of spangly bits, race exhaust and new bodywork, obviously the tyres, and a few of the other tuning goodies, that can soon escalate. But yeah, for a track day bike, I don't think it's too bad. So there is one other bit of news on the bike. The bad news is, I've sold it. So having put all this work in, other than next weekend, weather permitting, I'm not actually going to get to play with it. But the good news is it's gone to a really nice guy called Ben. He's very enthusiastic. He's been watching the whole series from start to finish. And the even better news is he's got his own ideas on how he wants to paint it. So he's going to do all the bodywork. I don't have to do that. So I'm really quite happy about that, because there is quite a lot of work to do on the bodywork. The even better news is he's actually hoping to race it next year. So I'm really pleased about that. It'll be definitely going out on track and getting used on track the way it should be. And hopefully we will try and catch up with him at one of the rounds and see how he's getting on with it. So there you go, Ben, it's all yours, and I really hope you enjoy it and look forward to catching up with you soon. So that's it for this video. Like I said, I hope you've enjoyed it, I hope it's been helpful, and will I be doing another series? Well, I do have another project bike, we'll just have to wait and see. So once again, thanks for watching, take care of yourselves, and you never know, you might see me soon. Bye for now.